To start the tissue drawing, I need to create a template. So what I do is I take a piece of O tag and my 2B pencil, which is my darkest pencil, so I don't have to press very hard. And I'm going to start creating holes that I want to see down through. Now I'm going with triangles, like really nice rounded triangles because they look like tissue, so I really want to look like tissue stretching. So by using the rounded triangles, it really gives you the sense of muscle being pulled. You'll also notice that I'm leaving about a ½ inch of space around them, and I'm also leaving about a ½ inch to 3/4 inch space around the edges. So I'm not going off the page here. As I'm doing these rounded circles, I'm trying to get some bigger circles, I'm trying to get smaller circles, and then when I'm finished, I'm going to look for some larger areas that I can break up even smaller. So like right here, I'm going to add in a small little piece. So remember, it's important to get all these close together so that we have more space to draw underneath. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking my X-Acto knife and I'm trying to cut it very smoothly. You should be able to do the whole thing in 1 or 2 cuts. You don't want to drag the blade. You want to have a really nice, clean edge. So if you can spin the page, it's helpful. If you feel like it's dragging, you need a new blade. So it should be really clean and smooth like so. And then I'm just going to keep going and cutting them out. Now that I have my template cut, I'm going to lay it down on my paper. And again, I don't want it going off the edge, so I'm going to try to center it the best I can. And I'm going to take my 2B pencil, and I'm going to very, very lightly trace out all the parts. Make sure it's nice and sharp. So once I sharpen my pencil, I'm going to start tracing it out. Again, using my 2B. I don't want to press hard because I'm assuming that I'm going to be making some mistakes and I want to be able to erase pretty easily. So I'm going to trace the whole thing out. My suggestion would be hold it with one hand, and then as you're tracing, lifting up, make sure you can see all the parts that you need, and you should be in good shape. Once I'm done tracing, I'm going to lift it up and I'm going to start looking for areas that need to be cleaned up a little bit. If I have any gaps or I have any holes, I'm just going to very carefully take my 2B pencil and darken it in just a little bit more. Again, trying to keep a nice clean line so it looks something like this. Then what I'm going to start doing is I'm start adding in the drop shadow. I want to cover up parts that I'm not currently working on so I don't smear it. So I grabbed an extra piece of paper and I'm laying it down. And then what I'm going to start doing is going around. Oh, I need my glasses. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start going around. I'm going to start darkening those lines. And I'm going to start fading them out to become drop shadows. So I just used my 2B pencil and my HB pencil to try to soften up those edges so they look more like a drop shadow. Now I'm going to take my 2H pencil and I'm going to start filling in the holes, the whole thing, which is going to make it easier down the road to figure out where I should be drawing, where I shouldn't be drawing. So again, I'm going to cover up, I'm going to protect the areas that I just did with the 2B because again, it's going to get really smeary if I'm not careful. So I'm going to start filling this in with the 2H pencil. So I'm going to fast motion this so you don't have to watch the whole thing. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those holes that I created and I'm going to start filling them in with the 2H pencil. That's going to start creating that level of depth. I'm going to be drawing more sections in those open spaces, so I want them to be just slightly darker. And when I say slightly, so the paper is going to be your one value. So the part that I already traced out, I'm going to leave alone. And then now I'm going to start putting in this a little bit darker. So I just want those holes to just be a shade darker. So you can see the holes are just barely darker. It's not a big difference. The closer you can keep it, the more layers we can create down the road. So now I'm taking back my template again, and I'm going to move it around and flip it just so they're going in different directions. And what I'm trying to do is break up the larger spaces. So I have these larger holes, and I want to try to make like one of those little tendrils go through the larger holes. I'm using the same template twice here. You don't have to. If you have another template, that may be much easier in the long run. You just cut out a whole new series just like you did the first time. Now what I'm doing is I'm skipping over the white areas that are not shaded, and I'm adding in the tendrils in the areas that would be holes. So as I'm drawing, I am very careful, and I'm not pressing hard because I know I'm going to make a mistake and I want to be able to erase easily. So you can see right now I'm working on this little hole here, and I'm going to draw right up to the edge of the shadow, and then I'm going to stop, and I'm going to skip over that part and then pick up on the other side, because that's going to become, so I would see through the hole there. And then the same thing here, I'm going to trace it out, but when I hit an area that I have not shaded, I am not going to trace inside there. So again, draw super light because you're probably going to make a mistake. I've made a couple making this video. But you can see how this works. So we're skipping over the top layer, and we're only drawing inside the shaded holes. So I'm ready to remove my template, and you can see now that it looks like those lines I drew are underneath the other ones. When they're not, I'm just skipping over the white areas. So I'm going back now with my 2B pencil. Again, I'm trying to smooth it out. I'm trying to look for any holes, any mistakes, anything that I may have missed. And now I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to start darkening those areas just like we did the first time. Now the difference this time is the first time when I made the little holes, I filled in the entire hole with the 2H pencil. And I'm going to do that again, except now I'm going to skip over the part that's going to be the tendril, and now I'm starting to make the new holes a little tiny bit darker. And so you can see I'm not adding a lot, I'm just making it a shade darker. So now you'll see you have a top layer which stays white. The second layer, you added on a little bit of 2H pencil. The next layer underneath, I'm adding a little bit more 2H. So again, here I'm gonna take my 2B, I'm gonna fade out the drop shadow. Then I'm gonna take my HB, I'm gonna blend that out a little tiny bit. And then I'm gonna take my 2H and add a little bit more depth to the hole. So with my 2H, I'm gonna start filling this in. And again, we just repeat this process over and over and over again. So when I'm done this layer, it should just, the hole should be a little tiny bit darker. And then I'm going to add on the next layer. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to flip it around. So again, I can try to break up the larger spaces. I'm using the same template over and over again. I think it would be a wise decision for you to make your own templates. But again, what I'm looking for is I'm trying to break up some of those larger spaces with the tendrils. I'm going to go back in with my 2B pencil. Again, I'm being very careful to not draw outside of the shaded areas. Make sure you barely are touching your pencil to the paper because again, we're going to make mistakes and we're going to have to erase them. And the last thing you want to do is have a big black line right in the middle of what should be white. So be very careful at this point. So I've now just traced out the third layer, and what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start again with my 2B pencil. I'm going to start creating the drop shadow on the third layer. The only difference this time is instead of filling in the new holes with the 2B pencil, I'm going to start filling them in with a light HB because I need them to be even darker. And you can see here I'm starting to shade in that new area with the HB, which is of course making it get darker. And as you know, once I finish with this, I'm going to lay on another template on top. I'm going to trace that out, and then I'm going to fade out the drop shadows just like I've been doing throughout the whole process. You can see at this point, I'm just trying to make those holes just a little tiny bit darker. I'm not trying to make huge jumps. The closer we can make the values together, the more layers we can create. If you jump to it too dark, too fast, you're only going to have enough room to do a couple layers. But because I'm being very careful to keep them close together, it gives me more opportunity and more range that I can complete it in. And again, you can see here, I'm going through with the light 2H, or I'm sorry, a light HB, making it just a shade darker. And then I'm going to go back to the template, and then I'm going to draw the next layer, which would be the fourth one. And then same thing, I would go around the outside, create the drop shadow, then go around the inside, and make it a little bit darker, and then the next layer and the next layer. So it's the same thing just over and over and over again. So if you take your time and you go slow, you just go one level at a time, it won't be so confusing. So now I'm adding on the next template. Now I'm running out of room and the template isn't really working, so I'm going to adjust it a little bit just to make sure that I break it up. And I'm only going to focus on this bottom part here. So I moved it so that I'm making sure that I break up that space. You can see when I'm tracing it, I'm not going inside anything that isn't shaded. So when I pull it away, it looks like this. Then again, I'm going to take my 2B. I'm going to create the drop shadow just like before. I'm going to try to fade out that drop shadow a little bit, but then I'm going to go in with a little bit heavier HB to try to make those holes seem a little bit darker. So here I'm adding in the next level of HB. When you get to the end, you don't have a ton of room, so you may not use a template anymore. You may just freehand in a couple tendrils. So I have that large space right there, and so a template may not do it. So I'm just going to freehand in, or I'm going to take a piece of template and use it. It's really up to you. And now again, I'm going to go around the outside with my 2B. I'm going pretty heavy here with my 2B. Then I'm going to start filling in that space. I'm still not all the way to black, so I'm still, I'm filling that in with a light 2B so that I can get one more level in there. And for this one, I'm pretty sure I just freehanded it. So we're not quite close to black yet. There we go. So I'm going to lay that in there. And then all those little tiny holes I have left over, I'm just going to fill those in completely with black. And that gives me my 5 layers. And that's what's going to create the depth. So you can see in that area I'm working now, it really looks like it's going deeper and deeper into space, where some of those other ones that only have 2 layers don't look that deep. And that's it. That's how it works. Yep.